Greetings, loyalists, heretics, xenos, and other assorted entities of Warhammer 40k. This is Arendelft. Today I'm just talking a little bit about one of the book that I turned in to the Black Library about a year or two ago. And I turned it in right at the deadline, so I didn't manage to get in, I don't think. But in any case, I'm just going to talk a little bit about it and what I try to make it into. So it starts out with basically a trader captain taking his, he's stuck in the warp. When I say stuck, I mean he got caught in the, okay. So he's on a regular trading route when he gets, a little bit off course. And then they get stuck in the vestiges of a warp storm. And the longer they stay in the warp, the more the warp storm is dragging them further and further and further off course until the navigator simply admitted the fact that, everyone admitted the fact that they now no longer had any idea where they were. Their sensors were blind, their navigator was barely keeping them pretty much intact. And their Geller fields were at the literal end of their capabilities. Over and over, the Mechanicus tech priests had been almost overhauling the Geller field generators while they were still running, desperately trying to keep them running so that they wouldn't fall and they'd be consumed by the warp. As they continued, the captain's been running, commands in command, nearly non-stop. His first officer finally insists that he gets some rest. So he trots off to the next room, and, his own personal quarters. And after getting a brief rest in, comes back onto the bridge to find it completely abandoned. And he's, kind of sitting there going, okay, what's this about? And so he literally attempts to hail all quarters. No answer. Nothing. He tries to get his systems. He knows none of his systems are responding. And long story short, he pulls up a 3D holo image of his ship. And what he finds there is his ship, looks intact. There's no reason why no one should be responding or anything like that. Until he looks at the top of it. And at the top of it, there's some kind of, morphine. He can see a hollow image of a ship morphing up to the top of it. Literally, it's being sucked up into something. And that's when the hollow imager itself begins to morph. It's now no longer solid, it's now a gelatinous matter. He, scrambles away from it and, freaking out for a bit before he realizes that the Geller fields must have failed. I mean, systems show that they're working just fine, but if they've fallen, there's no saying what is currently happening. There's no saying that the warp's messing with everybody's mind. It just says his systems are operational, even though nothing really is. So as he preps, to leave the bridge, try and find some way of getting off the ship, because he remembers the fact that he has a craft that's warp capable with its own Geller fields and warp drive, whole 9 yards, down in one of his bays. The pod for the navigator opens up. And she comes basically stumbling out of it. And she, now being the only other living person on this ship that he's found so far, he goes running over to her and asks her if she knows what's going on. She basically tells him that they were hitting a particularly rough patch in the warp storm when she got incapacitated. And that she does not remember what happened after that. So her having been taxed so thoroughly by the journey, she's barely able to stay out, so he basically carries her off of the bridge. And he keeps encountering things that don't seem real on his ship. like literally false walls where he knows that it doesn't belong there. And his ship seems to be starting to turn into a maze. The only reason why he manages to find his way out is because of the navigator and her third eye. She keeps telling him where to go and what's right and what's false, and also helps him to avoid a lot of death traps. Finally, he manages to make it down to his ship, which seems perfectly fine and intact, and he gets on board. And he finds several of his own crew have also made it, including his first officer on board the ship. And they've been trying to get it online, however, without the captain's personal codes, they weren't able to do so. With his arrival, he now punches in his codes. He gets the navigator in place. The ship is a technological marvel. It was supposed to be a hybrid, well, not a hybrid ship, but a type of ship that would allow navigation through the warp without a navigator. However, with that in mind, it was built to do so even better with one. So it was built to go both ways. So basic travel through the warp without one, hyper advanced travel in a sense with one. In any case, the navigator gets plugged in, and weary as she is, this is their lives on the line. And as they punch it out, they can't get the bay doors to open or anything like that, so they ended up doing a concentrated blast of the ship's weapons, which, thoroughly blast away a section of the bay door, allowing them to escape. That's when they discernibly realized there is no Geller field. Outside was the raw continuum of the warp. And their own Geller fields, of course, are keeping the ship intact as they punched away from it. But using the basic systems, as I mentioned before, the ship could navigate through the warp without a navigator. Using that navigational system, the captain takes a look back at his ship as they're punching away from it through the warp. He sees what appears to be a hydra literally morphing out of his ship, like growing out of it. And the heads are all turning towards him and his ship as he's gunning away. He hears this raw, like extreme terror through the warp as he and what's left of his crew escapes. In any case, the storms get significantly worse, like really, really bad. Like there was no way his ship was going to ever make it through that, with it having been so taxed by that point. And his own small ship is, being buffeted and taking a bit of a pounding on its Geller fields, but it manages to survive and hits what they call the Eye of the Storm. And of course, we get those in actual storms, on Earth, but in a warp storm, you don't usually have an Eye of the Storm, but there's this point where it's completely calm. So they safely decide to then drop out of the warp to see where they are. And as they drop out of the warp, they end up in a solar system. It's rather miraculous. They're not stuck between the stars or anything like that. They just jump out, and here they are. Well, they begin, of course, to do a scan of the system with the ship's sophisticated scanning array, and what they find is, for all intents and purposes, a graveyard. They find there are 4 worlds with cities that are dead. Two or three of which were uninhabitable. The next one barely being habitable, and then they find ruins of ships in the orbit of many of them, including one relatively near them. And what surprises them even more is that when they get close to the ship, they find it obviously Imperial in design, and the ship suffered massive catastrophic damage to its side, like it got rammed by another ship. And they end up boarding it, and when they get inside and they get access to the ship's logs, they find that these ships date back to the Horus Heresy. nearly 10,000 years before. And actually, before the heresy actually occurs. A little bit before. So when they gain access to the logs, these people were actually part of a small army of ships. Military and civilian. Their leader being an admiral who, when they got caught in the same warp storm the captain did, were of course buffeted. They lost more than a few ships along the way, mostly civilian ships that weren't meant to be able to take, long range flights through the warp, and taking such a pounding. They got through the same shell right before the warp storm, right before the calm, where they then dropped out just like the captain did. And their logs, however, indicated a thriving culture. Human. Purely human. Not even any xenos. Just strictly human. And it was on a technological level of incredible advancements. Not even military. They were that isolated. Their technology, non-military wise, was well beyond that of most of the Imperium, if not all of it. They had marvels the likes of which the Imperium had never seen. And it was like, it blew this admiral's mind to find this out. And he theorized that this warp storm wasn't like, isolated incident of some kind, that it was actually keeping these people bubbled off from the rest of the galaxy, which is why their military was nearly non-existent. They were so isolated, they'd never truly been attacked except for a few of their own civil wars and whatnot, and they had bounded ahead of the Imperium in that time to something that made the Imperium's own golden age of that era look small by comparison, except for, of course, the military technology. Of course, the Imperium was going through the Great Crusade by that point, and was pouring a lot of their resources and advancements into their military. Had they poured the same kind of advancements in at least equal measure towards other technological bases, they probably would have been equal to, if not ahead, of this isolated little civilization. So the admiral, of course, he's making contact with them, and they're completely peaceful. They're thrilled to hear that they're not alone, because they had grown to that point thinking that they were alone in the galaxy. They of course knew of the warp, but any ships that they had made attempting to escape that system had of course failed, because of the massive warp storm around them, neither been driven back or destroyed. And so they had remained isolated. And as they're sitting there conversing, the Admiral, of course, then decides to try and contact the Imperium. And he focuses all of their navigators and astropaths and just everyone with psyker abilities onto one ship and just a concentrated message out. And at first they wait a few weeks, not knowing if the message made it, while they continue to have talks with the human populace of this this civilization. And they've, at this point, struck practically an alliance. These people are thrilled. They want to join the Imperium. They want to be part of something greater, and they're more than happy to share their vast advancements in technology across all spectrums, which would help the Imperium a small amount. Well, that's when this Admiral gets a message in return. And he gets it from Horus Lupercal. Horus, first lauds him for finding this place. Says, "You've done well, thank you so much. You've done the Imperium a service of which it can never repay." But that's when he then transforms to a darker countenance, and then begins to tell the Admirals, like, yes, but it's not forward. These people, they not what we think. They are violators of everything sacred to us. You know, well, not exactly those words. Basically, they say the Mechanicus has also deemed them. You know, you can't use heretical or anything like that because it wasn't words used back then, before the heresy. But it basically says that they've been violating all the laws and that they are unworthy to live. And he directly orders the Admiral to annihilate them completely. And the Admiral, of course, is devastated. He's just like, I'm sorry, what? Sends a return communication. Not protesting, because he doesn't want to protest the War Master, but he sends a message, you know, basically begging Horus to reconsider, telling all the strides that he's made with these people and how peaceful they are, how their military is nearly non-existent. And Horus sends back a rebuke for all intents and purposes, tells the Admiral it's not his place to question him, and long story short says, either do this, or when you return to the Imperium, you will be stripped of all rank and title, and so will all of your people. Every person on all of his ships will be deemed traitors if he does not do this. And of course, this coming from Horus with the cowl and the whole 9 yards, the Admiral, with a guilt-ridden heart, then makes the orders to annihilate the system. And at first he can't bring himself to tell these people he's going to murder them. And he knows that even if he did, there was nothing they could do about it. Their military was a joke. So they then travel to all the planets in the system and begin a massive systematic bombardment, wiping them out. And it culminated in the capital planet, which managed to mount a defense. They were surprisingly resilient. They managed to come up with a military that they poured everything they had into their military from that point on, and mounted a rather decent defense on their world. But the fact was the Imperium had been working on their military. So while they heroically did defend their capital worlds, the Imperial ships broke through and annihilated the populace. So with the populace of the capital eradicated, and every other world, you know, the population destroyed, he didn't lose a single ship. They didn't even suffer, you know, that bad of damage on most of their ships. And all of them are even still warp capable by that point. So he then, you know, sends a message to Horus with the Cowl telling him the task is completed. Horus then sends back another message where his countenance has changed completely. Any pretense at being something remotely good is gone. And he basically darkly and smugly tells them, you know, thank you. Job well done. And now it is your turn to make the sacrifice. And he tells them, you know, they're going to die there. And it is at that point that the logs then begin to get fuzzy. The captain and his crew can't really tell what happened at that point, but it's clear that some sort of battle ensued where the Admiral and all of his people were wiped out to the last. All dead, all gone. So, with the captain now having seen this, and of course having already known that Horus was a traitor, he then, you know, wonders, well, why did Horus order the destruction of this civilization? I mean, Horus did a lot of horrible things back then, but he was trying to rally more to his banner, not simply wipe them out pointlessly. So Horus, for all his treachery, wasn't stupid, so there had to have been a reason. And they can't uncorrupt logs to find out what happened after that. Not without a far stronger, I don't know exactly what they call it, codicipher, or it's basically the logic engine. They need a far more powerful logic engine than they have aboard their small ship. And all the engines aboard that ship are corrupted beyond salvage. So at that point, they have, little choice but to try and go throughout the system and see what they can salvage. Because they know they can't break out of this place in their one small ship. There's no way they'd be able to escape the warp storm. It is with that in mind, they begin their attempts to figure out the story and figure out what happened and make their eventual escape. It is eventually after that, this gets to the point where I hadn't written any more. I'd written up to that point, but no further. So the plan was after that for them to eventually find out the secrets of this place and what it really was. Which, for those who are familiar with the Eldar, they once ruled the galaxy, and their fall causing the birth of Slaanesh, which apparently is the Eye of Terror, the birthplace of Slaanesh. It was planned, pretty much, for the fall of humanity to cause the birth of another Chaos God, full-fledged Chaos God. And with the failure of the Horus heresy, Horus's death, and the not actual true death of the Emperor, merely his crippling, they were unable to fully this creature, this entity that was going to become this dark god, it wasn't able to actually, become born. It wasn't innate. It needed the pretty much death of humanity in order to be born. And while the continual destruction and death of humanity throughout the galaxy is feeding it and sustaining it, it lacks the potency to truly allow it to be born, because of course the death of humanity would be a massive event which would cause that. And though the massive amount of carnage the Imperium causes every day, including in its own forces, isn't huge, it is literally not even close to enough to cause this thing to be born. Just enough for it to remain in existence. And I hadn't much planned past that. They would find out these secrets, and then they would also find out, if the Imperium does fall, this entity will be born, and there will be yet another one of these monstrosities in existence. And it culminates, the book would end up culminating in the escape of the captain and his crew. Because of course there would be literally nothing they could do to kill this creature, considering what it truly is, even though it's not been born yet. And so I haven't written how they escape, of course, they escape. And that how exactly that happens, all the details, of course, I don't have. That would be a Kickstarter. Kick in the face. And this is what I sent to the Black Library. I'm relatively certain that they would have, loved it, but I sent it right there on the deadline, like with hours to spare. I didn't factor in the time zone difference, so where they were, it was probably already too late. And I didn't think about that. And I'm thinking in one of my last hard drive wipes, I purged my book. So, yeah, something to move on. Because out of all the works that I've been writing on, that was one of my best. in any case, that is the synopsis of my book that I was writing for the Black Library, which, you know, before it got purged, I believe I named it Black Dawn. And it was the first of, well, what was going to be a series. In any case, revolving around the main character, which was going to be the captain. Alright, well, we'll go ahead and end it there. Thanks everyone very much for watching. If you have any feedback, especially on this, I would love to hear from you in the comments below. If you like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs down. And if you really like this kind of stuff, feel free to subscribe. In any case, don't get in too much trouble, or do. It's always up to you. Toodle!